Unlike the first 7 buttons, the final buttons in Multimask are not for choosing a mask source. Rather, they provide additional options for working with images and masks. Color grading is an impressive new feature for working with image colors, and it's this button right here. When you click the color grading button, it opens this cool new interface. A color grading function was added to both Lightroom and Camera Raw a while back, but I've had limited success with them. TK8 color grading works on a similar principle, but because it's in Photoshop, we have the power of layers, masks, and selections in play. In my experience, I can get better control and better results. If you don't yet have any color grading layers on the Layers panel, which in this case we don't, then the first step is to create one by clicking the plus button. So here is that new color grading adjustment layer. And the color grading interface will shift image colors using this layer. To avoid confusing the panel, don't make any manual changes to this curves layer. Always just use the color grading controls. Color grading adjustments for darks, midtones, and highlights are initiated with these 3 buttons. You click the black button to add a dark tone control point to the color wheel. And then you move that control point to adjust the colors in the dark tones. Color adjustments become stronger as you move away from the center and more subtle as you move towards the center. Right-clicking on the button will reset the point to the exact center. Control points in the exact center of the color wheel make no adjustment at all, so if you don't want to adjust the dark tones, for example, I would leave that control point in the middle. With the dark tones, often a point just slightly off of center will produce all of the adjustment you need. Clicking the gray button adds a mid-tone control point so that you can adjust colors in the midtones. And again, the further you move from the center, the stronger the adjustment becomes, and you can shift towards any color on the color wheel. And finally, clicking the white button adds a highlight control point, and we can move this to adjust the brightest highlight color. Once you've adjusted all the control points, you can now click the All Tones button to show all the control points and adjust them further if you want to. Clicking on a control point selects it, and then sliding this slider will adjust the brightness of that tonal range. So if I want that tonal range to be darker or lighter, that's what that slider will do. If I want to adjust the brightness of the midtones, then that'll do that for me. And finally, the highlights. Sometimes the color grading adjustments we make will also shift the brightness in the tones in the image. So this button will toggle the color grading layer from normal blending mode to color blending mode. In the color blending mode, we should be adjusting just the colors and not the luminosities, but you can toggle between normal and color depending on what you're trying to do to decide which one looks better for your goals. Note that in the color blending mode, the brightness slider won't have an effect. And when you're finished, you can click the X button to exit the color grading interface. And now we have that color grading adjustment on this curves layer right there. And if you ever want to entirely remove a color grading adjustment that you've made, you can just go to that color grading layer and use this button to delete it. Now let's say that we had moved on and made more adjustments to this image. For example, a quick levels adjustment here. And then at some point in the future, I decide that I want to work with my color grading adjustment again. All I need to do is go back to the color grading layer and make it the active layer, and then re-enter the color grading workspace. In the interface, click the All Tones button, and that will reload all of those color grading points that we'd previously set. And now we can continue working with them. And if for some reason I wanted to make another color grading adjustment layer, I could click the plus button again, and a new color grading layer would be set here, and it'd be ready for me to add control points and make further color grading adjustments using a whole separate layer. Just the color grading feature by itself is an amazing and powerful new way to adjust image color balance. However, the real power comes when it's combined with multi-mask's ability to create and output masks. For example, let's say I want to color grade the sky and the land separately. I could start by creating a sky selection and saving that as a mask. And then I'll invert that selection and save that as a land mask. Now I can deselect, and we'll look down here on the channels panel, and there's my sky and my land masks that are saved. Now I'll open my channels and select the sky mask. And now I'm going to output this using the color grading output button. When I do this, it opens the color grading interface. It creates a new color grading layer, and this time the mask has come attached to the layer. So now when I go through the color grading process, the mask on that layer will constrain my color grading adjustments just to the sky. And I can also check to see whether I like the normal blend mode or the color blend mode better. In this case, I like the darker sky, so I'll go with the color blend mode. And I can go to the all tones button and fine tune all of these. If I want to change the colors of the darks in my sky, the midtones in the sunset, and the highlights in the sunset, somewhere in there. I think that looks pretty good. And now I'll exit color grading, go to my channels, load my land mask, and now output this to a new color grading layer. So here's the new color grading layer with the land mask. And this will enable me to color grade my land separately from my sky. So I'll just fine tune those control points really quickly for the landscape and try color mode. So here's my sky color grading and here's my land color grading. By not pushing the control points very far and using the color blend mode, you can see that those are very subtle color shifts. And I find that for landscape photography, that's what I want and what I have trouble getting with some of the other methods. And color grading can be used with any kind of mask. So for example, if I want to color grade just my highlights, I can output a red lights 1 mask to a color grading layer and use that to adjust the highlights. So there's that highlight color grading. I could target color grading just to shadows with a darks mask. I can target color grading to a specific color in the image using a color mask. I can even use the black and white mask to create a custom color focused mask that will target certain colors and not other colors, something like that, and output that to a new color grading layer and use that to color grade the areas targeted by the mask. Let's see here. There can be a fair amount of fiddling with the control points while I watch the image to see how it's being affected. You really have complete control over the colors of the different tones. And when you have multiple color grading layers and you're in the color grading interface, you can switch to another layer and then click the All Tones button once to get rid of the old control points and click it again and the control points for that layer will show up. So you can adjust them, and you can, in that way, move through all of your different color grading layers and get to the controls. So when it comes to working with color balance, the color grading feature may be the best tool available, especially when it's combined with the other multi-mask features.